Hello, everybody, and welcome to my podcast, Fulfillment in Faith. I am your host, Shannan Mondor. Today's episode is a continuation of my series, You Are Not the Only One. I was brought forth to do this series because during my healing from my addiction to alcohol, there were so many times that the universe had brought me to my stillness. And it was during those times is when I learned so many things about myself, and I was guided. I was guided to talk openly about my past, my abuse, my addiction, and most of all, to speak my truth. From those moments of silence is when we learn, we grow, and then we teach and help others. Today, I have a very, very special guest. Her name is Criss Madrigal. Sorry, I can never say names properly, but who is here to share her story. So welcome, Criss. How are you today?
Thank you, Shannan. Thank you. I am just filled with so much gratitude to be here with you today. Just being able to speak in your series, You're Not the Only One, just makes me so happy. That title, I think, resonates with so many people.
It really does, doesn't it? Like when that title was channeled to me, it was like, this will touch people on so many levels.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So, Criss, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from and a little bit of background?
Yeah. So I am currently in California. I live in Northern California near Sacramento. I was born in California, but raised half of my childhood in Mexico. My parents gave us this amazing childhood and afforded us the opportunity to, spend half of the year in Mexico and half of the year in the US.
Oh,
And
nice.
so that went on until I started high school, where things just had to, get a little bit more serious, not serious, but me in terms of wanting to get an education. My parents asked, where would you rather go to school, in Mexico or in the US? I picked the US. And then so my journey just kind of continues from there, Went to college. I went to San Jose State, got multiple degrees, um, did what most people do, you know, go to college, get the job, get married, have the family. And, here I am today, with this beautiful family and a journey that has taught me so much, specifically in motherhood.
Now, this is also where your journey of silence has come in and the stillness. So, if you can please tell the audience what brought you to that point in your life and the whole story regarding that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's such a powerful, question sometimes, when you say, what brought you to stillness? And like I just said, I had gone through life. I've always been somebody that's a go, go, go person on the go, with all the things to do, the degree, the college, the school, doing all the things that we're supposed to do. Got married in 2008. We had our first child in 2009. And then in 2011, we decided we wanted to grow our family, but we were surprised with identical twins, identical
Oh,
twin girls. Yes.
and what year was
And
that?
2011.
2011. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so my pregnancy quickly got complicated. Um, it was considered a high risk pregnancy. So we had additional, tests and exams, and they identified that both of our girls had congenital heart defects. And then there was, some concerns with their kidneys. So all those additional testing led to eventually a diagnosis of 22q deletion syndrome. And 22q it's a syndrome known as the most common syndrome no one has ever heard of, because it's actually quite common, but because it manifests itself in so many different ways, it many times it goes undiagnosed. Like it can manifest itself in your body in over 180 different ways. So for our daughters, they had open heart surgery upon birth, both of them. Because they're identical twins, they both had this genetic disorder. And so congenital heart defects, they both have one kidney. The second kidney just disappeared. The body self-absorbed it. Poof, gone.
Wow. That's
Yes,
unbelievable.
it is. Our body is so amazing and crazy the things that it can do, right?
But
Um,
what even shocked me even more was when you said it was 180 different ways. Like
yes,
that
yes,
also was shocking. Wow.
yes. And that's why that specific syndrome goes undiagnosed for many for such a long time, because there's so many different ways that it can manifest itself that only someone, like a specialist, someone very familiar, would be able to say, hey, why don't you go get tested for this? For us, we were extremely fortunate to have learned of this diagnosis while I was still pregnant. So I live in the Sacramento area. My care was transferred to Stanford, which is 2 to 3 hours away, but they have some of the best doctors there. It was there that they suggested, I get tested for this. Um, and of course, they both came back with the diagnosis. And so we were fortunate enough to somewhat mentally prepare for
Yeah.
what was to come, something that so many other families don't have the privilege of that. They just
Can I
learn over
ask,
time.
how did you know in advance? What brought that forth?
Yeah. So it was the congenital heart defect combined with the kidney. They had what's called an abdominal kidney where it doesn't ascend to the proper area. So that was another hint. And then they both had a single artery umbilical cord.
Wow.
Those three things combined is what triggered the doctors in Stanford to have us test for this specific diagnosis. Like I said, only someone who is familiar and is aware of this would, be able to tell us that. And
Yeah.
so that changed the course of everything for us.
Hmm.
We I went and delivered there. And so, I mean, even my pregnancy, I was, bed rest and all that good stuff. And the date was getting closer. And I had a son at that time who wasn't even two. And I'm trying to navigate all these things. I've never been away from him. Now I had to move and be away from my husband and my son for about a month, so I could be close to the hospital. And I didn't want to do that. And my doctor told me at that time, if you don't go, you run the risk of going in labor here, and we would have to airlift you to the hospital. And now you're putting your daughter's life at risk.
Mhm.
So that sounded very scary, but we learned about it. We were there. The girls were born. One of my daughters, Celeste, had her open heart surgery when she was 2 months. Um, a year to that date, our second, our other daughter, Alexia, had her open heart surgery. And it's been a journey since then, right? They've had every kind of developmental delay that you can think of, from not walking or taking their first step till they were like 2.5 years old, not saying their first word till they were like 4 years old. And they've been to over 500 physical therapy sessions each, every therapy you can think of, because all along, my husband and I made that conscious decision that we were going to do everything that was in our power to make sure that these girls were successful. It wasn't going to be because of us,
Mhm.
we were going to be there to support them. And so, um, that worked for us. And it's so crazy, once you start to work on yourself and get coached, how you can go back and see certain things in a different way. But if I fast forward to 2019, we said, what is it that brought you to that point of stillness? So here we are, 2019, and I reached a point in my life where I didn't recognize myself anymore. I didn't like the person I saw in the mirror. I was always exhausted and irritated, and I was not showing up for my children or my spouse in a way that I liked. I didn't like myself. I didn't like who I was looking in the mirror. I didn't recognize it, prior to that. And I had always interesting enough, I had always poured myself out to everyone, especially my immediate family, right there, my children and my husband. Yet there were moments in my life that I didn't feel loved.
Mhm.
And so here I was, like navigating this space. And I remember, like we all have, you say there's different love languages, right? And so my love languages are words of affirmation and physical touch. I'm like, oh, hugging. I'm very, with my kids and everything, a lot of hugs and a lot of I love yous and stuff. And my husband's love language is, words of affirmation and acts of service. So this entire time after we got married, my husband decided to work part-time and he was taking care of the children between my husband and my father. And so this man has done more for us and our family and our children and me than I would ever ask for.
Oh, beautiful.
More. Yet there were still moments that I didn't feel loved.
Mhm.
And so that's when I realized that the problem wasn't that he didn't love me or he didn't know how to show me love. The problem was that I didn't love myself.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that. Yeah.
I didn't love myself. So how can someone else um, love me, or how can I see other people's love towards me if I can't even find it within myself?
Mhm.
And that was really hard to just accept, but that was the reality. And I think that's where my journey of self-discovery began. Like it took me to get to a point where I didn't recognize myself. I just I couldn't show up for my family. And it just really brought me to that space of something has to change.
Mhm.
And when I realized that I needed to focus on me and put myself first and love myself first, that's where things started to change for me. That's where my journey really began.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Wow.
so, I mean, I kind of look back now, right? And there was other things that happened in 2019, where looking back again, there were all signs of this is a time where you need to start to focus on yourself, right? I learned that I needed to put myself first, like I said, in order for me to be able to show up how I wanted to be that mother, that wife that I desired to be, that daughter, that sister, that friend, everything. I needed to come first because up until that point, I was the last person
Mhm.
that I cared about,
Mhm.
that poured any love into myself. And it was about that time, end of 20, oh, I think of 2020 at this point, that I began to start working with coaches. And that's where my journey really began, like my healing journey, my journey of self love. And I now say, it's this journey where you have to heal your mind to then heal your heart
Mhm.
to heal your body because they all have to align. But it was a step, and one step at a time, right? So by me starting to heal my mind, it just, it was a way for me to just view things from a different perspective, have more compassion for myself, um, figure out, ways where I can show myself love. And it's so interesting. And I think you would agree that once you start to focus on yourself, there's almost like a ripple effect
Oh,
within
yes.
your family.
Mhm.
So I started to work on myself, but yet I started to see a change within my household. And the
Mhm.
only person that had changed was me.
Mhm.
Everyone else was the same.
Mhm.
And once I was able to do that, I was able to be in a space of like gratitude and love to help me heal my heart. And not that my heart was like broken or anything, but to me, if I can't value, and maybe that's not the right word, appreciate what I have in front of me because perhaps I'm a little broken inside, you know, how can I pour my love onto others, right?
I
So
think
I
the
was,
biggest thing when you were saying value, I think the biggest thing is a lot of us, um, we don't realize how much we don't value ourselves, our opinions, and that, right? And I think once you realize that, you know, you are worth something, that's where the shift really starts to change. That's where the healthy boundaries are brought in. And that was a huge shift for me. Like, I matter. My opinion matters. And I think that was one of the biggest learning lessons for me. What about you, Criss?
yeah. I mean, I feel like my opinions, the things that I said were important. They were valued, but there was an internal piece missing. I
Mhm.
don't even know how to explain it. It was, I didn't value myself. Like
Mhm.
other people valued me. This whole journey of motherhood, I can't even tell you how many times, people would say, "Oh, you're such a great mom and you do all these things and, I look up to you." And I couldn't see that. Like, what do you see? And I would say, like, what do people see in me that I don't see in myself
I got a question. That's the chameleon stage, because
anymore?
how you're saying it was how I felt my entire life. I was very much a chameleon, but I didn't realize it. I did not realize it until I started to do all my mindset work. And then it was just kind of like, wow, right? You know? And so, yeah, other people appreciated me and thought I was, the cat's meow and that. But, yeah, that's true. I didn't value myself. I didn't love myself. So I totally get what you're saying.
And I mean, even saying that is a little bit hard,
It
to
is.
admit to that
It
because
is. It really is.
people could look at me and probably think, oh, I never would have suspected that, I was the mom that, or I am the mom, that does all these things. I think if our girls and our son are as successful as they are, it's because of all the work that we've poured into them. And I remember um, when I was going to invest in a coach that was, high ticket and quite frankly, the most I had ever invested in myself. Now I've invested more beyond that, right? But at that time, it felt hard. And I remember having a conversation with my husband and just telling him, this is what I need. This is what I'm going to do. And when we were sitting there, I told him, I said, I look back and I look at our journey parenting the girls. That we made a conscious decision that we were going to do whatever it took to make this successful. We had a vision and we stayed till today, have stayed very tethered to that vision. And we've never questioned, how we were going to get there. We just took that next step.
Mhm.
We had, when I'm thinking of like vision therapy, when they told us, you can try it, you don't, whatever, it's not covered by insurance. It's kind of like considered experimental. I don't know what they consider it, but
Before you continue, can you let the audience know what vision therapy is? Because I think a lot of them probably don't know what that is.
yeah. So I'll take it one step back. So our daughters, when they were in third grade, reached a point where they were struggling big time. They were doing everything they could on their part. The teachers were doing everything they could. They had extra support. We were helping them, but they hit a roadblock. And it was very difficult. School was very difficult for them. It's like they would read something, they forget about it. They would do math and they understood it right now. 5 minutes later, they didn't understand it anymore. It was just, we couldn't figure it out. And so I am someone who will always keep researching and looking for, what I can do to help. One of my close friends said, well, maybe you ought to try vision therapy. What is vision therapy? And she says, well, here, she gave me the website and I looked. I still didn't know what it was, but I was going to do it. They said, well, we can help them. So vision therapy is basically therapy to exercise basically your eyes, to get your eyes to properly communicate with your brain. And so with our daughters, when we went to get them tested, we went to this doctor. And one of the simplest tests that I could tell you is they showed us a diagram. So it was like a textbook, and they had all these squiggly lines all over. And the doctor told us, what you see here, there should be straight lines, as in your eyes are following the lines of a textbook. But when you saw it, it's like someone had grabbed, a pencil and scribbled all over it. And she said, this is how your daughter's eyes are. So if you're wondering why they can't remember something after they read it, it's because their eyes are going all over in the book. So their eyes are not properly communicating to the brain. The right message is not going to the brain. So it's just the proper eye and brain coordination, just to simplify it. That's probably the simplest way to put it, in addition to other things, right? And so one of the other things was, one of our girls would always run like very cautiously. And the doctor said, well, she's running that way because the surface looks uneven to her. So how would you run confidently if the ground looks uneven? That made sense. The other girl really wanted to do, be on the monkey bars, and she always needed support. And one day I said, do you see the next bar or do you see it double? And she says, oh, well, sometimes I see it double. So how is she going to have the confidence to put her arm on the next bar if she really doesn't know where that next bar is? And so through this, go ahead.
I was going to say that, and of course that would be normal to them. So
Right.
they wouldn't know any different.
Right. Because that's how they've seen all their life.
Lives.
They wouldn't know to tell us.
That's something
because that's normal to them. And
they,
we've learned that that's
well, they
more
wouldn't
common.
be able to see danger coming towards them either.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah, like that's it. Okay, that's incredible. Wow. Yeah.
And so, I mean, something that insurance don't cover because they don't really believe in it. So here we are, we're going to try anything. And even things like that, where it's like, well, it's going to be $10,000 to put him through this. My husband said, let's do it. We didn't know where we were going to get that money from in the moment, but we had our vision set on what we wanted, and we did it. No different. I got a Facebook memory just this week where when our daughters did therapeutic horseback riding for a while, and that was very costly. And I remember that we wouldn't do it because it was not affordable, in addition to all the other medical expenses. And one day I was listening to the radio, and the message was, God will provide. And I remember in that moment, I said, yes, God will provide. And I told my husband, we're doing this. We're not going to worry how we're going to get the money. We're just going to do this. And we enrolled him. And not too much longer, we got a check from a very special person, and it covered their therapy expenses for 6 months. And that now that I'm doing the work, mindset work and manifestation and all that, I go back and I see exactly what we were doing. And taking it back to when I was going to invest on that first high ticket coach, I told my husband, We've had this vision. We have shown up as the parents we desire to be for our children, and it has worked for us. Why haven't we done it for ourselves? I said, it's time we do it for us. And everyone's on their own journey, right? I chose to move forward with the coach. He hasn't, but that's okay because we're all on a different journey.
Exactly.
And, that's where I say my journey of self-discovery has, started really. It started in 2020 and then I progressed because every time, you learn more about yourself and you invest probably a little bit higher ticket every time. And so, but that's only because of the growth we're doing.
Mhm.
And so when I started to be able to heal my mind, I was able to be in a space of gratitude, enjoy my family, and just feel so much love and abundance around me. And then it took me into the space of taking care of my body. And that was like, that is a whole other journey on itself, and a journey that I'm still navigating today.
Mhm. That's a pretty incredible story. Yeah, many sleepless nights I can just imagine,
Oh,
especially with those babies and then having a son first, and just to go through that whole transition. So through your journey, you learned so much.
yeah.
What is it that you want the audience to know that you learned the most about? Because there's always something that will always stick out.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the biggest things, and I could even talk a lot on this piece, right? But one of the main thing is, or one of the things that I will say here is we all came to this earth to fulfill a purpose.
Mhm.
And if you are not in a space today where you're confident that you are living in your purpose and this is what you were brought to this earth to do, and it's time to get to know yourself. And that starts with self-love. And I'm telling you, just working on your mind to then transmit that to your heart and your body is so powerful. And to me, all those three things are just aligned. And I'll share with you quickly because it brings me also to a space that I'm in today. Is I mentioned 2019 was a pivotal year. Well, 2019, when it comes to my health, is a year that I started breaking out in hives. I started breaking out in hives head to toe, still am. You know, different specialists later, tests, biopsies, and doctors would tell me, you're never going to know why. It's you have a chronic condition and you're not going to figure it out. And don't tell me that, I'm not ever going to know or that I can't do something because I will, show up differently. And I don't mean it out of arrogance, like I'm going to prove you wrong. No, I just mean that I don't give up easily.
Right.
And so, interesting enough, I began, just this year, a journey to heal my body. Like I felt like I'd healed my mind, I had healed my heart, but I needed to heal my body. I needed to figure out why my body has been breaking out in hives for so long. And to me, it wasn't the food. And Kathleen Cameron, because that's how we connected. I was listening to her one day, and she talked about she searched the spiritual meaning of pneumonia based on her story. So I searched what is the spiritual meaning of breaking out in hives, and it was stress and anxiety and overwhelm and trauma and suppressed anger. And all of a sudden, it's like things started to make sense for me. But in 2019, I wasn't ready to, I guess, know that part of my body yet. And when I started my journey with this nutritionist just a few months back, the first thing she told me was, you've been living in survival mode for the last decade. And this is how your body is trying to get your attention.
Mhm.
And yet it still took me 4 years to get to that space where it got my attention. But now I'm in a space where I know I'm convinced it's not the food. Yes, what we eat will, affect us and help the healing process and all that. But now I know that I have the ability to heal myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the journey that I am in right now with my health, that I know I have the power to heal myself. That's what I'm going to do.
And the one thing that I want to point out is when you know, first of all, when you love yourself, you know who you are, and you will figure out, you will automatically know every ailment that's happening in your body. And you will know automatically, boom, okay, what is it within me that is causing that? You don't look to the outside world anymore because you know everything is all within you. Like something will happen in my shoulder and I'll be like, oh, okay, what is it that's bothering me? And you're the exact same way now, and that's just all a part of the journey.
Yes. And it was such an eye opener to me, right?
Hmm.
That now I'm going through this holistic path, and to be told your blood pressure is too low, you need to get more rest. Your serotonin and your dopamine are so low. And that explains why your mood is the way it is. Your chemicals are so out of balance. So, and you couple that with, the mindset work that I've done and knowing that I have the power
Mhm.
not only to heal my mind or my heart, but now I have the power to heal my body because I now interpret these times as my body was trying to get my attention. And I got a bit overwhelmed in this process because in this journey of healing my body, I began to lose a lot of weight. I'm at the lowest weight I've been in the last 25 years. And even that became overwhelming, but I had to switch the way I thought about it. And it was no, this is me shedding the past.
Yeah.
And I feel like when all these things started to come to me, in addition to other things, and this kind of recently happened, um, last week of May, I spent that weekend. It's almost like it made me sick. And Shannan, you know this because you've heard it. Like when you're in that transition phase, you almost make yourself sick.
Mm.
And I feel like that's the point where I was at. And I slept almost a day. And I woke up and I felt like I was a new version of myself.
Yeah, and that transition phase really happens because your ego is fighting with you, and because it wants to hold on. It wants to hold on to that fear and the anxiety, depression, all of that, right? So physically you get sick when you shed that through your body. I've been there, I experienced it too. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
So if we take it back to, your question of what is something very important to get out to the world, it's not only, to find your purpose and make sure you're living within your purpose, but to really get to know yourself.
Mhm.
Be your own best friend. And that means take care of yourself, value yourself. Those people that we value, we take care of them, we celebrate them, we do all those things. Do that for yourself. Have goals in life that are going to aspire you to wake up every day and go after what you most desire. As a coach, I work with women, and that's one of the things that so many women have a hard time identifying. They don't know what they want, or they don't know how to set the right goals. And in that process, they get lost.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you always have to have a goal that is much bigger than you. Those goals that scare you, that we always talk about, that you don't know how you're going to reach them.
Take you out of your
They're
comfort
going to,
zone.
but they're going to fire you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, for sure. So what is it, the one thing, because you've mentioned so many things now, like, I don't know, you probably already answered this next question, which is, so what is it that you want others to know? Right? Because you've already touched so much on this already.
Yes,
So
that loving yourself is not selfish, it's necessary.
that is okay. That I got to tell you is one of the hardest things that I had to learn, self-care for me. Because if I, yeah, that was so hard.
Especially as a mother of younger
Absolutely.
children, there is so much guilt involved.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
my corporate job, pre-pandemic, I traveled a lot. I cried every night that I was in a hotel room because I was away from my children.
Yeah.
It didn't make it any easier, regardless of how many years. And so spending that time with my family was so important. Yet I wasn't really there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I had to be able to take that step back and take care of myself.
Mm-hmm. And it's really hard. It's so hard when so many other people are depending upon you, or if you're a people pleaser. That was my hardest thing, was because I was hugely a people pleaser, but I didn't even know it, you know? And then when I did realize it, to try and step back, it was like, oh gosh, that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. So, my dear, where are you now in life?
Oh my goodness, I am in such a different space than I was back then. Um, we haven't talked about this, but
Yeah.
I became a life coach, a mindset and life and mindset coach, um, over a year ago, I believe. But I've been working in the human resources space. I've been coaching people for the last 20 years. And I thought,
Yeah, you didn't even know it.
right. But it's like now it's time for me to coach in a space that has me fulfilling my purpose.
Mhm.
And so I recently launched my signature program. It's called the Reinvention Code.
Beautiful.
And it's to take women through that process of, you know, when you're ready to hit that reset button, acknowledging that you need help. That's step one. And then we go through this beautiful redesign phase where they get to redesign themselves from the inside out. And that's where the mindset work comes in. And then they launch into their reinvention. They reinvent themselves from the inside out. It's so beautiful. And so I recently, as in June 1st of this year, I launched that signature program and I am so excited. And since I do come from, the Mexican background, Hispanic, and my first language is Spanish, um, my next thing is to offer my signature program in Spanish. I am feeling very called to serve the Latino population,
Beautiful.
and that's where my heart is pulling me right now.
Well, that's exciting. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of just, being in your space and your energy. And when we did the meet and greet the other day, like, gosh, we just had so much fun and we just didn't want to leave each other's Zoom. And it was awesome. It was awesome. We
I
could have
know.
talked for, I'm thinking, another 4 or 5 hours, for gosh sakes, it was just amazing.
Yeah, it
So
was
what,
good.
I know. So what are your final words that you want to put out to the world? How can people get a hold of you, and just information like that, like social media
Yeah,
handles, anything like that,
yeah, perfect. So you can find me on Instagram at Criss Madrigal. And you'll have that spelled out because a lot of people misspell my first name. It's Criss,
I know, I just love
Criss.
how Chris is spelled. I love it. It really
Yeah.
has it's really a statement, Chris. People aren't going to
Yeah,
forget how that's spelled.
I
CRI.
hope not because it gets
Oh,
misspelled so
no,
frequently.
yeah, what that was the first thing I noticed about your name. I'm like, that is just the coolest way to spell it.
Thank you. So yeah, people can find me on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page that I will send you the link to as well. And I'm really focused on trying to just unite women to find that space of self-love,
Mhm.
and go through that journey themselves that we talked about. I have my signature program, and I'll send you the link to the site there where they can learn more about it. But yeah, those are the main spaces. And in Instagram, there's the link tree there that you can find links to, previous podcasts to learn more about me, um, signature program, and everything. So
And I
thank
just
you.
want to let the audience know too that everything regarding Criss is going to be in the notes in the podcast. So if you want to get a hold of her, just go onto the podcast, go down into the notes, and everything will be there. Yeah. This was
Thank you.
wonderful. This was wonderful, Criss. I am so thankful that we've had this opportunity to connect on this podcast. And I know, just the message that you've got out there is going to help so many people out there. And I really am blessed to have you on as an interviewer. And I want to thank you for definitely being a part of my journey. So thank you very much.
Okay. Same to you. I appreciate you so much just for having me here as a guest.
I'm so, so glad. Okay, well, you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.